Before we get to Josh, let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
There's a lot of countries that have diplomatic relations with one another. The Abraham Accords is a partnership. The strength of it is to have majority Muslim countries, the Jewish state, able to partner on things to show the world that it is possible.
That is Marco Rubio talking about the expansion of the Abraham Accords, Kazakhstan. But it's more than just you can recognize Israel and trade with Israel. I'll explain.
Number 2.
That is why I want you, my fellow San Franciscans, to be the first to know. I will not be seeking re-election to Congress.
Yay! They should have had just a wild stadium cheer after that. The worst speaker of our lifetime. Forget about powerful first woman. Enough. Look back at her legacy, and you would tear it up just like she did President Trump's speech in the first term. Goodbye, old guard. Hello, new guard. Say farewell, liberals, and say hello, socialists. The expired speaker is out, and become clear that party is going way left in the future.
Number 1.
I think we're getting closer. I mean, what I'm hearing is you have Democrats who are eager to move beyond this and are moving closer towards accepting what John Thune actually offered more than a month ago.
Shutdown, meltdown. Another attempt today to end the longest shutdown in history as Debs dig in because they think what they learned from the election is by acting tough and having the lockout, it makes the Republicans more vulnerable. What's the reality? Josh Kraushaar joins us now, Fox News radio political analyst and editor-in-chief of the Jewish Insider. Josh, the takeaway I believe that the Democrats have are leading them to continue the shutdown. Anything that you want to say to dissuade me of that notion?
Yeah, no, I agree with that analysis, Brian. I think they have become emboldened, frankly, as a result of the off-year election results, winning, by a bigger margin, I think, than even they expected in Virginia, New Jersey, and also some of the other local races. So, they figure they're not paying a penalty for shutting the government down and holding out for healthcare, Obamacare subsidies. And, so I think this is going to go on for a little while longer. The expectation was maybe a mixed result on Election Day, maybe less than expected a performance by the Democrats could lead them to come to the bargaining table. I think they realize they're not suffering an immediate political penalty, and they're going to try to hold out for as much as they can.
I think so, too. And I get the sense that even though there is some concessions here on the right, not concessions, you open it up, we'll extend the CR, we're going to pay health care, we're going to pay the Agricultural Department, we're going to pay the VA, and we're going to have a short-term extension for the rest of the government until January. It makes sense, but it doesn't look like that's not good enough.
Yeah, look, we're at the end of the week. I thought there could be some momentum after the elections to get things done by today. Not going to happen. We're heading closer and closer to Thanksgiving. I think that is more if you wanted to circle a date where it's kind of a drop dead date. I think that Thanksgiving is going to be maybe closer to it. I also think that the air delays, the cuts to airline service in many major airports across the country is going to be felt by a lot of Americans. So if there's we've talked before, Brian, that a lot of Americans haven't necessarily felt the pressure unless you work for the government, you're in the D.C. area, or you have a federal government job. This is now starting to spread. The pain is starting to spread out to a lot more people. So I do think that is also going to be a pressure point that could start to get some movement on a negotiation.
Yeah, here's what Senator Kennedy says. He pretty much agrees with you. Cut 8.
I think we're going to be shut down at least 10 more days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe longer than that. And I don't know what else to do. I've voted 14 times to open up government. They've voted 14 times to keep it closed down, and all they ever do is talk and stamp their little feet and keep government shut down and blame us.
And that's why the president said, just blow up the filibuster. They will. Is that getting any traction with Republicans? Because I am not for that.
No, it's not. In fact, probably one of the biggest moments in Trump's second-term presidency where Republicans in the Senate, essentially enough of them said, no, we're not going to change the rules of the filibuster. That was what Republicans fought for against Democrats when they were in charge, when President Biden wanted to do a whole lot of progressive, radical things in terms of getting his agenda passed. And there's the argument is a good one. The fact that no party holds power forever, and you want to have that filibuster, that's 60 vote supermajority to be able to restrain the most ambitious policy changes that one administration may try to make. So a lot of Republican senators spoke out against that. Trump acknowledged that. I think he talked about that with Bret Baier this week in his interview on Fox News. So I don't expect any changes to the filibuster rules being made, even though Trump has said he does want that. There's just enough resistance to the Republican caucus for that not to happen.
I'm sure I'm not telling you anything new that James Carville says he guarantees Democrats are going to win and they're going to blow up the Supreme Court, make it 13 justices, and they're also going to get 2 more states out of this. And probably do everything they can. So that's what Trump sees. He says, I'm getting leadership, some of the high-profile names, guarantee they're going to go for that.
Yeah. Look, and by the way, the election result, I think people can overread an off-year election result. But if you extrapolate what happened on election night into the Senate map, into the House map, there's a risk that Republicans felt pretty good about holding the Senate. They should. But if things get really bad, Democrats could take over that upper chamber. And that is also one major reason for the party not to blow up the rules, because it would really play against them in the medium term.
I don't think there's any doubt about it. Tom Tillis, he's outgoing senator from North Carolina, cut 10.
There's not enough to get the vote. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I said yesterday, there are simply not enough members who are willing to vote on it. I can't imagine that the Democrats would. So I appreciate the president's frustration, and I don't even begrudge him asking to nuke the filibuster. He's in the executive branch. He's frustrated with a lot of the obstacles the Democrats are putting forward. There's simply not the votes to nuke the filibuster.
So it just continues. They don't have the votes. And I also think I always hope there's always going to be a Manchin or a Sinema and now a Fetterman that would step in and said, sorry, this is not going to be good for the country.
Unfortunately, Brian, we don't have as many of those moderates, those Democratic moderates, as we used to. Fetterman is one who has been very outspoken about his disagreements, to put it mildly, with the rest of his conference. I do think there are some Democratic senators up for re-election. John Ossoff in the swing state of Georgia is a big one. Some of those Democratic swing state senators, like Mark Kelly in Arizona. Those are the names to watch. If there's any negotiations, if there's any progress being made, it's going to be those folks whose constituents are much more to the middle and are not liking the fact that we're now at, 38 days, 39 days of the shutdown. I
don't know if I can get myself to go to work after next year, because Nancy Pelosi has made it clear that she's not going to be in Congress anymore. She's being primaried, by the way. Here is a look back at some of Nancy's greats. Cut 21.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
He's impeached forever, no matter what he says or whatever headlines he wants to carry around. Make America, his hat, make America white again. You really don't know what you're talking about right now. This is like giving you a bowl of doggy doo, put a cherry on top, and call it a chocolate sundae.
Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. Scapegoat. You know what a scapegoat is? They get a goat and they heap all of the ills onto the goat, and then they run the goat out of town.
So I'm going to miss that like a high fever. Your response to Nancy Pelosi leaving, does it reflect this coming civil war in the party?
Yeah, it does. I mean, look, it's the end of an era for a lot of the old-time Democratic establishment leaders. Steny Hoyer is another name to watch. I think he is also likely. He was in the leadership with Pelosi as her number 2, and he's very likely to step down, retire at the end of his term this year. So this is the old guard. I mean, look, Pelosi's in her mid-80s. She hung on to kind of essentially be like a speaker emerita, trying to supervise Jeffries, supervise the next generation. I think there are a lot of worries. Jeffries has gotten a lot of heat from the left of his party, and Pelosi is not going to be there to kind of hold the party in line anymore. So I think one of her strengths was keeping the party in line, holding the line internally, and there's a lot of ideological differences in that Democratic caucus, but she was able to paper over them during her leadership. I don't know if this new generation is going to be quite as capable of doing that. And we see those ideological divisions with Mamdani getting elected in New York and some endorsing, some not. It's going to get messy. And I think that's going to – her legacy is obviously you played some of the highlights and lowlights, but also what ends up becoming the Democratic caucus is going to be a big story going forward.
So Congresswoman Jayapal was asked about the coming divide in the party. And is there a divide in the Democratic Party? Cut 27.
Should Tuesday's election be a warning to him that he's got to?
Absolutely. I think it should be a warning. It has been a warning to Republicans. Clearly, they're talking about a shellacking, and they got their asses kicked. I think one of them said that. And so I think that it should be to Democrats as well, that the way forward is to make sure you're fighting for people to be able to live, that you're delivering on affordability.
And the question was about Schumer. Should Schumer be taking a message from that? And she says yes, and Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, Schumer's up for re-election in 2028. The speculation is that he could face a challenge from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. His approval ratings in New York from the base pretty low right now. Didn't endorse Mamdani, by the way. So, I mean, that is going to be the next big fight looking ahead. You got the House with Jeffries. You got Schumer in the Senate. Schumer, by the way, he was the person, the leader who decided not to go ahead with the shutdown the first time around, and took so much heat from inside that caucus, especially from the left. Now he's going ahead with it, but he really, I don't think his heart is into it, and he's really out of step generationally and ideologically with that new wave of Democratic progressive lawmakers.
Yeah, here's what Jay Appel went on to say, too, when asked directly, cut 28.
There's always been divisions. There will always be some divisions. I think the ability to pull together for the right reasons is really important. I mentioned how Abigail and Mikey were really essential in pushing for universal child care here in the House. That we were not divided. There were two senators in the Senate, Democratic senator, at the time they were both Democratic, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who blocked that. But actually 99% of the Democratic Party was together. And I think we need more moments like that where we can show that we're really on the same page.
So we'll see. The party is always somewhat divided a little bit. Not everyone could possibly agree on everything, but this is going to be really transparent, especially when 28 comes. You're going to have AOC, you're going to have Bernie Sanders out there. Anybody in the squad that decides to run or go for a higher office, they're going to be out there, and they're going to be vehemently disagreeing with the Shapiros and the Bashirs in theory as well.
And Gavin Newsom may be trying to square that circle.
Yeah,
He'll
be whatever you want.
You pick your flavor of the month. No, I mean, she mentioned Spanberger, governor-elect now of Virginia, Sherrill in New Jersey. These are people who voted pretty pragmatically in the House, but they actually campaigned more, and they needed to cater to the rising tide of progressives in those two states. And in the case of Sherrill, she faced the primary from her left in that campaign. So, the big question to me, looking for the next few months, is how these incoming governors, they are pragmatists, but was it because of their politics in their districts? They couldn't really go to the left because the voters would vote them out in their districts? Or do they really truly believe that moderation and pragmatism is the way to go? We'll learn pretty quickly how they govern New Jersey and Virginia. Those are going to be big test cases, and maybe they'll be talked about nationally as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Josh. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Brian. You too.
And, of course, we have Clay Travis from OutKick. He is a founder there and also an author of a brand new book. And he also, you see him and watch him and listen to him on the radio every day. But his brand new book is called Balls, How Trump, Young Men, and Sports Saved America. And Clay Travis, that's what brings you to New York, along with the Patriot Awards, right?
Yes, it does. Patriot Awards were awesome last night. It was good to see you there.
Was that your first time you went?
No, I went. I've been several times. I did Seminole. And then we had the one in Nashville a couple of years ago, which is my hometown.
It's around the block.
Which was a lot of fun. But I always leave that place thinking that event, man, there's a lot of awesomeness in the world. It's very uplifting all the time. And I thought, as it always is, it delivered on that front again last night.
Yeah, I think it did. It's a very red, white, and blue event, and it's a lot of fun to see everybody out and about, and it's kind of cool. Long Island University, I actually went to that college, but for the most part, we were in Hollywood, Florida for a while. Nashville was great, and we'll see where we go again. Clay, right now, for what you see, do you hear anything, or do you want to save it for your show, about a lockout ending, shutdown? I mean, you want to fly out of here. This affects everybody. At what point did people realize this is a loser for everybody?
I think the flight situation is potentially going to mobilize a lot of people to get things solved because Democrat, Republican, Independent, I tell y'all, when you show up and you're trying to go through that TSA line, I saw it over 3 hours in Houston this week. And I'm flying out tonight, and I was just telling you when I sat down, Delta sent me an email and they said, hey, just so you know, your flight might or might not exist today. And so
what kind of email is that?
Yeah, I know. It's like, well, thanks. But I'm supposed to leave, about 3 Eastern and head out to the airport as soon as I finish my radio show. And I got no idea if I got a flight or not. And so that's frustrating to people across the board.
Did you hear what the guy from Frontier said, the president?
No, not yet.
He said, whatever you do, book another airline, book a flight later. So if you're on Delta, book one on American an hour later. By the way, why would that work for anybody's advantage? All of a sudden, one minute this plane sold out, the next minute it's wide open.
It's funny, I did that. So I have there is a late night flight out of here where we are in New York City to get to my hometown of Nashville, Southwest Airlines. And Southwest is the primary airline hub, honestly, for Nashville. So I fly them all the time. But in the event that got canceled, I'm trying to get back home. And so I might be flying out at 10. So I think there's probably a lot of people doing what I do. If I don't need to use that flight, Southwest's pretty good refund policy. I'll get the money back. But I kind of want to get out of the city.
I know. So let's talk about your book because it plays into what goes on. You really believe Democrats have lost the male vote. The testosterone has been missing. Did anything change after this election for you?
No. I think the biggest thing is if you look at the numbers, 600,000 Trump voters didn't show up in Virginia and didn't show up in New Jersey. Now, it's an off-year election, but Trump got more votes in Virginia and New Jersey than either of the Democrat winning candidates did. So turnout was down substantially, and turnout was down more substantially for Trump voters. Now, where I think going forward becomes the challenge is when Trump's not on the ballot, do Republicans have the ability to mobilize his low propensity voters? I think that's going to be the number one story of 2026. I think it'll be the number one story of 2028, candidly. But I do believe if you go look at those returns, even for the people who showed up, I shared this data this morning. I don't know if you kind of dove into it. I love looking at the data. For white voters, only white college-educated women voted for the winning Democrat candidates. Every other group voted against the winning Democrat candidates. And this book came out of a trip that I made to the University of Chicago in February, where they had a gender identity discussion panel. And I went on and they were talking about why did young men and why did men overwhelmingly break for Republicans. The Democrat brand is toxic with the young men. They use it as an insult. I've got 3 boys. They will kid each other with, oh, you're a Kamala voter, or, oh, you're a Democrat, because the Democrat Party has completely turned its back on young men, and I would say on testosterone and men in general.
So interesting. You know how they're compensating? Cursing.
Yeah.
Right? They started to decide to act tougher. We're going to put out, even Schumer is pretending like he's from the Bowery.
We used to talk about this, Brian. You've interviewed every politician under the sun at some point in time. But, we used to talk about this. Who was the guy you'd most like to have a beer with? And I remember that back in the day with George W. Bush and Al Gore, and certainly with Bill Clinton, and even Barack Obama. Who is the Democrat that you would like to just hang out with and watch a game?
I hear you. Absolutely, and especially now. I feel like it's a very judgmental party.
Yes.
They're waiting for you to make a mistake, to do something politically incorrect. What I'm so heartened by is that we're all leaving that, and the people that tried that started was Hollywood. And they're the first one going, I can't hire a crew because they got to be diverse. They got to have a questionable gender. I can't get the best key grip, the best audio guy, the best director, because if I want to win an award, I got to have a more diverse cast. I got to change every story to make some type of minority the hero.
Yeah, and this is why I always say people sometimes get mad at me. I spent a lot of time out in L.A. with Fox Sports over the last decade because Fox Sports is primarily based there. And so I've been on a lot of studio sets. The number of guys walking around carrying the camera, building the sets, who will come up and give you a fist pound and be like, dude, I agree with everything you say. People tend to think of Hollywood as a left-wing town. The people who build the sets, the people who carry around the cameras, that very often is not true. Now, the star on the camera, the person making all the money, and executives, that can be very much the case that is a left-wing town. But the people who build things in Hollywood, and there's still a lot of them, people who make movies and do it with a physical capacity of their job, they tend to be, a lot of them, on our team.
Absolutely. So I'll bring you to general sports, too. This story in the back page of the New York Post, did you see it today?
Yeah.
Giants kicker Graham Gano reveals he's receiving multiple death threats from people, whether he hits a field goal or misses, from people betting.
Yeah.
And, you blew it. You hit that field goal. You blew it. You missed that field goal. Your groin injury was hidden from me. You cost me X amount of dollars. I've heard other players complain about this. This is the age where everyone's betting. Every 20-year-old is betting, 25-year-old. And now you're getting mad at the players you used to worship.
Yeah, it's funny in some ways. My best advice on this, and
actually, you want to hear him say it?
Yeah.
Cut 41.
I hear everyone else's frustration, media, fans. I mean, shoot, ever since sports betting started happening, I get people telling me to kill myself every week, because I'll hit a kick that loses them money. I'll miss a kick and it loses them money. It was the other day somebody told me to get cancer and die. That stuff's part of it. Just being playing this long, that stuff, you're used to it by now. So, but with that being said, I see everyone's frustration and I'm frustrated too. Just want to play ball. And I think that just constantly not being able to is tough, but doing everything I can to try and come back and play. And I mean, that's my hope.
Would you say this is just inevitable? The minute they started making gambling?
Yeah, I also think it's a sign. I know gambling is the connection here, but social media is just toxic, right?
He was getting written letters.
Oh, written letters. We got written death threat letters to the House, and we had to turn those over. Written letters to sound scarier, and people are crazy. And obviously, I think people should be prosecuted for any of this. And I do think that would help on some level. But I tell him the same thing I tell my boys. I don't know that you gain anything from looking at comments from people you don't know. In life, in general, one of the best big piece of advice I ever got was never take criticism from somebody you wouldn't ask for advice.
Right.
It's the best.
And that's called everybody. So don't take it from anybody.
We do this show, and I remember talking with Colin Cowherd, who's a good buddy of mine, and, as social media grew, and he said, you go into the mention, somebody will be like, I don't know why you're talking about the Lakers right now. Why are you talking about the Cowboys? Because they're big teams and lots of people care, right? Yeah. Who knows better what people want to hear? The person who has been doing the job for decades or the person who has decided to pull their phone out and send a message. And his advice was, and I think it's a good advice for young broadcasters, don't read mentions during your show because you get people in your head. And if you're worried about what they are saying, you don't do the best job.
I hear you. So listen, Clay's got his book out. It's called Balls, How Trump, Young Men, and Sports Saved America. He interviewed Trump about 10 times, right? Maybe more. And do you get the sense that this was intention, or this is just Trump's speed that happened to unite men around him because they could relate more to him?
I think it's innate. Trump spent his entire life, to a large extent, in locker rooms. I think he connects well with men. Trump is the kind of, it surprises people who have not spent time around him. And I know you have. And people say, okay, what's he like? In my experience, super nice and very welcoming and very quick to give credit to others. The kind of guy who would walk into a locker room and be really well liked by everybody.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe surprises some people. But Trump one-on-one is very, very good. He gives you a great deal of attention, a lot of positive feedback. He's interested in what you say and what, in my experience. And so I think that you go back and look at Trump at old school WrestleManias or the big fights with Mike Tyson back in the day in Atlantic City. There he is ringside trying to put these events on. And now he's going to be doing the UFC fight in June, it appears, at the White House. He just loves it. He loves being in the arena. He likes the conflict, the combat of sports. And
it helps him as a politician.
Yeah, I think 100%. Because what matters, I think, in this day and age, and it's going to matter even more as we move into even more of an AI age, is do people think you're real? Do people believe, may not agree with you, but do they believe you're authentic about the way you act and behave?
And that's why I have no patience for Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
It's a total act.
Completely.
I mean, you could say when your body can't even match your words.
That's right.
His hands. If you're Italian, you talk with your hands. It's genetic.
My wife makes fun of me. I'm not Italian. She's Italian, but I talk with my hands all the time.
But your hands have to match what you're saying. He is all over the place because I don't think his head is attached. His mind, he's not saying anything he means.
Here's my concern. He's an articulate liar. And Democrats are really wrong on almost every issue.
Especially he's defending his work in California. How can you do that?
That's completely correct. Mamdani is an articulate liar. They want that story because it convinces them they're on the right side of history. So you and I might be out there and we're like, okay, well, if you do X, then the consequences are Y. That's how logically people think. Candidly, I think it's one reason that Republicans are doing so well with men, because they may not agree with everything, but they look at it and they say, okay, logically kind of analyze it. A lot of Democrats are emotion. And they want to emotionally feel seen, and they want to emotionally feel heard. I mean, even the Mamdani election that we just had in New York City, if he actually puts his policies in place, everything that he has complained about gets worse. It doesn't get better, right? And we can logically work through that and say, okay, well, if you're worried about the cost of housing, you need way more housing. You don't need to limit what you can charge for the existing housing, because that's actually just going to make the situation worse.
Clay, it plays to what I believe is going to be the debate, I think, for a responsible Republican, is you have to go to bat for capitalism.
Yes.
And you say democracy. Okay, that didn't fly. You tried to say democracy.
Right.
But if you just explain to people capitalism, and the rich people are good.
Yes.
Rich people actually, usually they're the ones who outworked you. Sometimes you got to get lucky, but if you look at their timesheet, it's 80 hours, right? And it's 80 hours. I had a goal. I have an opportunity to get a goal. You should love that guy's in a beautiful Hummer and a fantastic
I
plane.
agree. You should.
But I think we have to explain it.
I think the way to think about it is we got to build a bigger pizza. Right? Anybody who's ever been to a party and there's 8 slices of pizza and there's 9 people there, somebody's going to get screwed. The only way to make everybody happy is to build a bigger pizza so everybody gets a slice. And capitalism expands the economy faster than any other historical organization system in place. The downside of capitalism is it works so well that it creates the luxury of time and space to argue that there are other systems that would work better.
Yeah.
Like these kids out there, I understand why you're frustrated. Like the cost of lifestyle in New York City and in many cities around America is very high.
Forever, by the way.
It was never cheap.
Yes.
But you, as you get older, come to understand, hopefully, how capitalism works. But dads and mom are helping to front their bills. They don't have any idea. They're frustrated. I do think, Brian, the CEO of Palantir said this recently, Palantir, however you pronounce it.
No, Palantir.
Yeah, Palantir. Said that we're headed for, and I think New York City over-indexes this, a world where super young college graduates who paid for great degrees that they thought were going to guarantee their success, Ivy League schools, where a lot of these 22 and 23-year-olds don't have the jobs that they think they should, and they're looking around, and suddenly the guy who's the plumber or the guy who is the car mechanic, things that physically you still can produce with your hands, is more value than they do in an AI era. As a young lawyer, I mean, lots of young lawyers, Brian, are going to get replaced in terms of the work that they can do more efficiently, either outsourced to other countries or just AI.
They say this is the biggest shift since the cell phone.
Yes.
And what it did to the landline business, for lack of a better term, since 2003.
Yeah.
They say when everyone went out of a job, then nothing anyone did. It's called progress. So when those job numbers come out, Trump's going to get hit. 16,000 lost in Amazon, 7,000. So he's going to get, but it's really nothing to do with him at all.
No, you're 100% right. And I also think the Trump economy issue that he's going to get hit on, and I don't remember this. You were too young probably to remember it too. Biden was so bad that the vestiges of the price increase that occurred so rapidly in his tenure is still lingering, because everybody out there is upset when they go get a fast food meal like I do at Chick-fil-A with my family, and I have to pay over $50. Everything just costs way more than it should because prices skyrocketed so rapidly. And the historic analogy here is it took a while for people to learn that Reagan had fixed much of the economy because Carter was so bad. I think that's what Trump is dealing with right now, is the hangover of Biden.
And
economics.
Clinton benefited from Bush 41.
Yeah.
Pick up Clay's book. It is out this week. It's called Balls, How Trump, Young Men, and Sports Saved America. Thanks, Clay.
Thank you, Brian. Keep killing it.
Do you think Zohran Mamdani is a leader in the Democratic Party now?
Well, of course he is. He's going to be the mayor of the city of New York. He made it clear what is true in every state in this country is that the richest people in America are becoming phenomenally richer. That's what Zohran campaigned on. It resonated with people. It will resonate with people in every state in this country.
So he's a leader. Wow. He hasn't even gotten the job yet. He just won it. Congratulations. But he's a leader. And of course, independent socialist. Bernie Sanders, I'm not disparaging him, that's what he calls himself, would know. Tomi Lahren is here, co-host of the Big Weekend Show from 5 to 8 on Saturday, 5 to 8 on Sunday. Tomi, do you believe the New York City elected the next leader of the Democratic Party?
I think in their mind they did. And if that's what they think is going to win them the midterms, going to win them in 2028, I mean, have at it. But the problem with Democrats is that they think that the American people only exist in their deep blue cities. They think the American people only exist in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, D.C. area. They don't really account for all of the Americans in those really important swing states that they lost all 7 of. Mm-hmm. They don't think that those people matter. So they get a sugar high off of New York City that elected a socialist/communist. And they're like, well, look, this is how we win. In New York City, by the way, he won. Was it a blowout? No.
He said he's got a mandate.
Yeah, he said he's got it, but it was 1 million people. And 1 million people in the city of New York City, it sounds like a lot, but is it really? So yes, you won in deep blue New York City, you got 1 million votes. Is that going to work in Ohio? Is that going to work in Michigan? Is that going to work in Pennsylvania? Is that going to work in Wisconsin? I don't think so.
Are you relieved that the socialists lost to Minneapolis, the Somali socialists? Because Adam Fry, that guy Fry is terrible.
Yeah.
Remember, he let the Minneapolis police station go. But I guess at least he's not anti-American. At least he's not anti-capitalist that I know of. This Somali was campaigning with a Somali flag.
Yeah. Oh, no. And speaking directly to what he thinks are his people and pledging allegiance to Somalia. Again, we've got a problem with unfettered immigration in this country. We really need to take a look at that. We probably shouldn't let as many people into this country who hate all of our values and traditions and way of life. That's something to look at. But this is what the Democrats continually do to us, Brian. They give us insane, and then they give us more insane, and then we look at insane like, well, at least insane won.
Oh, yeah, I know they're both terrible. I would say, there's another thing, too, is that Democrats have a lot to be happy about, but it looks like Republican voters didn't even show up. And then they seem to have done better with women, all right, and people under 30. Do you think this is a one-off, or do you think that Trump should learn something from this? The Trump administration should take something away from this?
Yeah, it's sobering. Now, listen, I don't think that what happened on Tuesday is necessarily indicative of what's to come, but it is a wake-up call, and it would be ridiculous to ignore it, and it would be stupid to ignore it. We need to work on women voters. There is, for as much as the left has alienated young men, the right has not done a great job of capturing female voters.
Give me an example. Why? Because of Roe v. Wade?
Well, that was the big deal in 2022. That's why we lost, right? So that's why it looked like it did. The red wave that never came, that was, to me, really an abortion issue. We haven't heard as much about the abortion stuff because the Trump abortion bans haven't happened. That was the big thing last year. It didn't happen, so they've moved on. It'll come back. But I think even more so than the abortion issue. Unfortunately, the conservative Republican movement has really leaned into some of the more social traditional issues. And I'm not saying those are bad issues, but if you look at the young women and how they're voting, I think there are a lot of young women that say, I agree with your economic policies, but when you start talking about all of your social stuff, you lose me. And that doesn't...
Give me an example of some social things.
I'll tell you. I think it's great when we have cultural leaders talking about getting married and having kids and being traditional wives and mothers. I think that's great. But when your political message to women is, well, you should consider being a stay-at-home mom, and you do really need to go to work, and you don't really need to be a boss, and there are a lot of Gen Z and millennial women that say that party's not for me. Because whereas I want to be a wife and a mother, I also want to be an executive. I also want to work a job. I also want to have my own money, and I want to do something and accomplish something in the workforce. But when the Republican Party is leaning so heavily into be a traditional mom, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you're talking to Gen Z and millennial women, our generation, especially millennial women, like, we didn't grow up necessarily that way. We grew up wanting to achieve, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Right. So maybe just let us do whatever we want and stop telling us how to live our lives.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree with you. I think that ship has sailed like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, people make your own judgments. I know the whole thing with same-sex marriage during Bush's first run, when he was going against Al Gore. We believe marriage should be between a man and a woman. That was something that was popping up. You had to address it. But this is, if asked in a podcast, if I'm a candidate, how I view a woman, if that comes up, Charlie Kirk would have answered, my image is what you just said. But he was not running for office. I don't think he was saying you better go grab the mantle of this. And if you look at the first couples in the White House, J.D. Vance's wife is a very productive, accomplished lawyer. Melania Trump is a very good businesswoman who's was a fantastic model.
And who's running the Trump administration? Pretty much all badass women.
Yeah. So it's not hard. You don't have to say. All you have to do is just look around and just tell your story. So that's what you think Vivek Ramaswamy was saying too, wasn't he? He said, enough with this judgment and ideologue. Do you think it's dangerous for Republicans to keep saying Mondami is a Muslim? Oh, he's a Muslim after 9/11. Do you think, I think that's a step back too.
Yeah. It's not about saying he's a Muslim. We don't care about that. It's about pointing out some of the issues. See, this is the problem, and this is the trap that they put us in. It's not about him being a Muslim. It's about the ideology that he has expressed. Okay, we should reject Sharia. We should reject globalize the Intifada. We should reject we're going to arrest Netanyahu if he steps foot in New York City. We should reject Linda Sarsour saying we're going to force Mondami to de-invest from all of Israel. That's the stuff we should reject, right? So I also don't want us to go back to the era of Obama when you couldn't even say radical Islam. We all had to pretend like there was no problem with it.
We're able to say that again.
Yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah,
there's a real problem with it. Look at Dearborn, Michigan. Like, there's some things that are happening there that are uncomfortable. When the mayor of Dearborn is telling a Dearborn resident that was upset about a street being named after somebody who prays Hamas, that they can leave and he'll throw a parade the day he does.
Yeah, he's telling me you can leave. I'm telling you to leave. As if his job.
I think we can have a problem with that.
Right, absolutely. I think that's a good point. But looking back at this election, I don't think, this is what I believe. They say, well, Trump's not on the ballot. These guys got to get used to it. The midterms are going to be different. He's going, I know he's going to go everywhere. I think his word is he's going to have a convention.
Yeah,
so
maybe
in
Vegas.
The summer, Oh, you know what? It's already done.
It's not done, but that was the rumors.
Will you ultimately make that decision? It sounds like you're on the decision committee.
Listen, I do 6 hours on the weekend, and we've talked about it. But I think Vegas would be a good spot.
It'll feel like he's running. I know Trump gets it better than anybody else. Now he went from the least experienced to the most experienced. So I think he's going to go, no, I'll be on the ballot. And he'll outline exactly I'm going to get impeached if you do this. You remember we went through last time? We're going to do that again. This time he did not love Winsome Sears. Great biography. He didn't like her as a candidate, and I think she was critical of him. And then with Jack Ciattarelli, the theory was that if you were too much involved in New Jersey, it becomes a 6-point loss, like you lost, even though it was showing improvement. Not sure he could win in those 3 states, and he wasn't going to play a role with Curtis Sliwa in New York City.
Yeah. So that, again, I think that this wasn't a good indication of, it wasn't a referendum on President Trump. I think it was a problem with a gender gap, and I think it was a problem with some of maybe the candidates weren't the strongest that they could have been. And I think, again, people got lazy and complacent because we're still on, it was a year ago that we were cheering MAGA, MAGA, but we have to remember that there have been a lot of red waves that we thought were going to crash that never did.
Do you remember how the red wave that never happened actually helped? Because Joe Biden did so much better than everyone thought, no one asked for him not to run.
Yeah.
And the country got over Afghanistan. The country got over 9% inflation. I'm going to just cruise.
But
I'm
why?
Going to cruise to 4 years.
Because of abortion.
Right. But the bottom line is he had a case to make. Yeah. And they go, all right, well, let him go, which is obviously a huge mistake. The New York Post had an editorial today, a message to the president. Don't tell people that things are affordable and going down. When they aren't. They say, for example, Target went up 5.5%, Walmart 5.3%, Amazon 13%. Things went down with eggs. Things went down with gas. So say it. Don't just say things are good because Joe Biden did that and he lost. It was a disaster.
People
Do you
are
agree
still
with
feeling
that?
it. Yeah, I don't think that you can try to tell people that things are great when they're not. I think that's always going to be a losing strategy because people still go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
So I think people are insulted when you try to tell them that. Explain to them why it hasn't come down yet. Explain to them when it will. If it's going to take a little bit for the tariff fatigue to wear off,
the
tell
big,
people
beautiful
that.
bill is not even in. I mean, it passed, but it hasn't been implicated.
Just be honest with people. It's going to take a little bit. This is what we're working on. Don't worry. Energy prices are going to come down. We're drilling here. We'll drill in there. Like, just tell people. It's going to come down. We realize right now it's not enough. We're going to work on it. But shift your message to an economic message.
Now, do people have to wait to Saturday and Sunday to see you? Are you going to be on another show called Outnumbered?
I'm going to be on Outnumbered in just a few minutes.
Wow, it's going to be great. I cannot wait to watch it. And I'll be done with my show, so just wait to get the signal before you actually start. Okay? If you don't mind. That is Tomi Lahren. You can watch her from 5 to 8 Saturday and Sunday on the big weekend show, and she hosts OutKick. Tomi Lahren is fearless. Tomi, always great to see you.
Good
Thanks
to see
for
you,
stopping
Brian.
by. Have a good show.
Thank you.
Hey, we are back, and it's, we're coming up on year 249. We're into year 49 of our history. Next year, 250, and everyone's emphasizing that, and that's correct. But we should really talk about 1775, too. And a lot of great history books are coming out, including the next one. It's called The Honest Book of Presidents, The Men Who Shaped America. And joining us now is Alan Estrin. He is co-founder at Prager University and also the executive producer of the Dennis Prager Show. Alan, welcome. So I love the concept of this book, especially looking back on our history. What's your approach to The Honest Book of Presidents? Why honest?
Well, the honest really, Brian, has to do with context. We really worked hard in this book to provide context for our readers, because this is the one thing that really seems to be missing from a lot of history discussion, especially when it comes to American history. You need, if you're going to understand these people, these men, our presidents, you need to understand what kind of world they were operating in. So the Honest Book of Presidents is we looked at the good, we looked at the bad, and we came up with our best assessment. And a lot of people are involved, a lot of mainstream, well-known historians, which I'm sure you're familiar with as well.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that I love. That you point out that James Monroe is the most underappreciated, in my view, of our founding fathers. He was just around everything between fighting wars, between working out peace deals, Louisiana Purchase. Can you go through that for us?
James Monroe is a true American hero, one of our best presidents, and lived one of the most remarkable lives in American history. First of all, as you know, Brian, he was a key person in the Battle of Trenton. He was like 19 years old. Had Washington asked him to secure a road into Trenton. Now, Trenton was a key battle in the Revolutionary War, and Monroe was right there. He was wounded, badly wounded, and he should have died. And you could say it was luck, you could say it was a miracle. A doctor came by where he was lying and saved him. This was just the beginning of Monroe's life. He goes on. He was a major player in the War of 1812. James Madison, who was a brilliant guy but not a great war president, really depended on Monroe to run the War of 1812.
He got rid of Secretary of War Armstrong after he made some terrible decisions, including allowing Washington to burn. Yeah. And he took his Secretary of State and said, I want you to be Secretary of War too. And one of these great moves was to call Andrew Jackson and let him get into the fight, because Jackson didn't know anybody. He got a great militia, great fighting spirit, but he's like, yeah, you could fight. Well, go ahead, let's do this. And he knew enough to give other great leaders a chance to shine.
One of the things about Monroe is that people kind of tend to think that he was a protege of Jefferson and Madison. It's true. He was very close to those guys, but he was his own man. He was definitely his own man. And in fact, Madison and Monroe differed very substantially on the original Constitution. It was Monroe, I mean, in addition to all the other things he did, he was one of those people who pushed for a Bill of Rights. And he wasn't happy with the original draft of the Constitution.
So interesting, because I think, was it Jefferson that was against the Bill of Rights, thought it was unnecessary?
I don't think it was Jefferson. I mean, I think it was Hamilton and obviously Madison. They didn't think it was necessary. There wasn't, if it wasn't mentioned in the Constitution, obviously they considered it a right. But people like Monroe and Patrick Henry and others said, no, you gotta put this in there. And Madison was wise enough to recognize, I'm going to have to do this if we're going to pass the Constitution.
So, we talk about Washington. I was just at Mount Vernon. I gave a speech there the other day. It's an amazing place if you have not been there yet, although they're still rehabbing it a little bit, some construction. But, why was he the indispensable man? Just when you think you pick up Washington, you're going to read it, and now you're going to find, he wasn't who they told us in 4th grade or 8th grade or 12th grade, and that's not who they portray on television. This guy lives up to the hype. The more you dig, the more impressed you become. Is that how you found him?
Oh, no question about it. I mean, and there are so many Washington stories, so many key moments in that early American history where he plays such a pivotal role.
And that's why he's known as the indispensable man. He really is. And he was recognized then and for that generation. At the time, he was looked at.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they knew at the time, if it wasn't for Washington, this whole thing wouldn't have come together. You can't name an important moment in the first, beginning with the revolution and obviously the winning of the revolution and then the construction of the country after that, in which Washington is just not there at a key moment. He's always there. The indispensable man was a term that came up very early, and it's absolutely true.
And Alan, there's very few people that just everyone can agree with, that's a great man. And you have people and Jefferson and Hamilton and Madison, that's the guy. There's nobody like him. He should be president. There's nobody like him. He should lead the army. And there's nobody like him because he's so selfless. He is the original guy who understands this is service. This isn't about your power, to being a power hungry leader. And he walks away. He really did not want to leave Mount Vernon and come to New York and become president.
No, I mean, there's that famous story about the American painter Benjamin West painting King George III. And King George III asks West, what is Washington going to do after the war? And West says, well, he's just going to return to his farm. And King George is reported to have said, well, if he does that, he's the greatest man of the age. And he was, Brian, he was truly the greatest man of the age.
Right.
And there were so many great men at that period.
It's so interesting, diving into Washington, too. He didn't have the easiest childhood. His dad passed away. His mom was really tough, had a rough life herself, impossible to please, right? His older brother was a great mentor, but he was rarely around. And he was always hesitant because the people around him were much more higher educated than him. He had a different type of education. So he had his mild insecurities too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And another famous story is that he wanted to join the British Army. They turned him down.
Yeah, thank goodness.
They just assumed that if you were an American, a Yankee, that you couldn't be as good as a Brit, and they were wrong.
So one of the things that you go out to, you show, is that Lincoln thought the South was bluffing. Now, even though they left the Union before he even got to the White House, he thought that they could be brought back in. He thought that they would never actually leave. Can you bring us back to that mindset?
Well, yes, and that is absolutely the case. I mean, you had the Missouri Compromise in 1820. You had the Compromise of 1850. The South had a habit of constantly threatening to leave. And as far as Lincoln was concerned, look, there only a relatively small percentage of people own slaves in the South. And he thought this was just another bluff and that he could talk them out of it. And he was wrong. It had just gone too far.
And a lot of people were mad at Lincoln because, he ran on, we're going to eliminate slavery. When he got there, he made a deal with the South. He goes, look, you keep your slaves, just come back. And then people like Frederick Douglass were incensed. It's like, well, you ran on getting rid of the slaves, but what was his objective? Keeping the country together first. And then we'll worry about that second. And they didn't want to hear it by the time he got there. Plus, this new guy, no one knew him, and nobody in the South voted for him. Kind of a split ticket situation, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wasn't on the ballot in most, if not all of the southern states. No, Lincoln wanted, his goal was to hold the Union together. And if it meant we keep slavery at that point, and he said it, I'm okay with that. the Union cannot split, but the South had gone too far. They could not come back. And then they faced Lincoln's wrath and the North's wrath, and obviously it was a horrible conflict, but he saved the country, which is why he's always ranked as one of our greatest presidents.
So one of the most mild-mannered presidents, but people know him because of his fiscal responsibility, is Calvin Coolidge. How did that play into the success we had economically in the 20s, the Roaring 20s?
Well, Calvin Coolidge, a personal favorite of mine. The man who governs least governs best. That was really Coolidge's theory. He believed in the American people. He believed if he could get the government out of the way, the economy would thrive, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And did he go 2 terms? Or did he go 1?
Well, he went. He sort of went 1 3/4 because Warren Harding died suddenly in San Francisco early in his term. By the way, I would mention, as long as we're talking about Warren Harding, there are all these guys that usually don't get mentioned, like Harding. Harding, I think, is a very much an underrated president. I mean, he was coming after Wilson. People had had enough of Wilson's socialism, and Harding ran on his slogan was normalcy. Let's return to normalcy. And Harding did exactly that. He returned the economy to the American people, to American business.
Yeah.
And had he lived, I think he would have had a good presidency. He did have problems. There was some issues with corruption as an administration, but it's really been blown out of proportion.
Bill Clinton, the luckiest president, you say. Why?
Well, he was lucky because when he came into power, China was not a big issue. Obviously, the Soviet Union was gone. There was the internet was just beginning to blossom. He had no major conflicts to deal with. The world was it was a moment when the world was like more at peace than it had been in a long, long time.
Yeah. And the economy ended up good. He ended up, but famously, we always play it, when he talked about the deficit being 0. We had no deficit because he actually did a deal with Republicans.
That's absolutely correct. And Clinton was a pragmatist and a moderate. And in retrospect, certainly as it comes to the economy, Clinton did very well. He obviously was someone who couldn't get out of his own way, and unfortunately, his presidency is really known for one, let's call it, bad act.
So the Gerald Ford, you say, sacrificed his presidency to save the country from national suicide, and are you alluding to that he pardoned Nixon?
Yes, yeah. Nobody wanted him to do it. His advisors didn't want him to do it. Obviously, the press, who hated Nixon, they really wanted Nixon to go to jail. They didn't want him to do it. And the fact that he said, no, it's better for the country. Let's get past this. The nightmare's over. And he was right. He was right. It cost him his presidency. You know what also hurt him was that skit. I mean, you may be I think you are too young to remember this. The skit on Saturday Night Live, where they constantly referred to Ford as a bumbling kind of buffoon.
Chevy Chase.
Yeah. And the fact was, Ford was probably the greatest athlete to occupy the White House. The guy led Michigan to a national football championship in the 30s. But he stumbled off the plane one time and they caught it. And Chevy Chase made a whole routine out of it, and that and the pardon really what hurt Ford.
And think about it too, Alan. He still almost won. All the corruption involved with the Nixon situation and how it just the whole country was obsessed with it. Ford never was running on a ticket. He was picked from the House to replace Spiro Agnew. He becomes president. Right. He is the ultimate definition of accidental president. And then he still almost beats Jimmy Carter.
Right. Gerald Ford was the only president ever to never get one vote.
Yeah.
Because So, Brian, a point I'd love to make about this book, that it's a series of biographies. Obviously, it's biographies of all the presidents, but we wrote this the team approached this very intentionally. This is a biography of the United States of America. Every president is involved in whatever the biggest issue is of the day. It doesn't matter whether you're Franklin Roosevelt in the middle of World War II, or you're Chester Alan Arthur and you're another accidental president and you're dealing with civil service reform. Whatever the major issue is, it goes through the White House. So when you read this book, it's a short history of the United States of America. So it's really, in essence, two biographies: biography of all the presidents and a biography of America.
Love it. Alan Estrin, thanks so much. And to everybody that put the book together, The Honest Book of Presidents, get it wherever you're comfortable getting books. I download them all. So this way I can highlight them and I can always refer back to them. Alan, thank you. Appreciate it.
Brian, pleasure.
Absolutely.